Zuldin spent the morning holed up in his underground workshop, tinkering with his latest creations. He crafted traps and other devious mechanisms for the Black Thorn, the Assassin's Guild of Cardion, where he had been sent by his uncle Aldrin just 2 years ago. Zuldin never told anyone, but he deeply resented this work, resented the mistreatment at the hands of his cousin Zuldin, who was a lieutenant at the same organization, and resented his past. After his parents were killed in a troll attack, the young gnome had been raised by his uncle, and it had been a rough upbringing indeed. While Aldrin, now warden of Obsidian Gate, was stern but fair, Zuldin was a mean-spirited bully, always reminding his younger cousin that he was not a true obsidian carver and did not belong in his family. Zuldin put these thoughts from his mind. Thankfully, there was a different life, a life centered around the guild, Fondia's band of ragtag rebels. Although there was not actual rebellion going on, it was just good to have a bunch of like-minded friends and a place to meet, an oasis in the dark city that Cardion now was. It had not always been this way, people told him, but Zuldin had only been here for 2 years, and the city's fall at the hands of Jakar and his hordes had occurred more than 20 years ago. All he knew was a city where humans and orcs were the dominant races, and everyone else kept a low profile. At noon, Zuldin dropped his tools and ate a quick stew in the Blackthorn's uninviting cantina, then he moved out. His heart jumped with joy as he headed for Soliana's refuge. While he was not eager to show the stranger around, it was damn sure better than his work at the Assassin's Guild. Soon after, he found himself walking the streets of Cardion, Thanael by his side. The Dark Elf seemed brooding over something, and Zuldin wondered what this man's story was. He knew Dark Elves. His own uncle had occasionally received visits from a mysterious fellow from the Nightlands, which had always piqued Zuldin's curiosity. Cardion had its share of Dark Elves too. The young gnome had even picked up some of their language, and sometimes he listened in, although he did not understand too well. Jakar rules the city with an iron fist, Zuldin grumbled as they made their way through the crowded streets. No one is safe here, and troublemakers do not last long. Thanael nodded solemnly, signaling he understood. The Dark Elf's black eyes were scanning the surroundings, taking in the impressions of this foreign place. Dark Elves were a regular sight in fallen Cardion. While they were few and far between, Thanael did not stand out and realized that this served him well. As they passed by a shop displaying weapons and arrows, they witnessed enforcers of the city's tyrant arresting the blacksmith. "What's going on here?" Thanael asked quietly, his features twisted into a frown. "Ivor made some of the finest arrow tips in all of Cardion. It would appear they want them restricted," Zuldin replied, his gruff voice betraying his anger. "There's nothing we can do for him. Might makes right in the city." Thanael nodded again, thinking to himself that this place wasn't all that different from Galtorlin. The pair continued on their way, and Zuldin told the Dark Elf all he could think of about the city, especially what to watch out for and what to steer clear of. Finally, they arrived at a huge arena, from which the sound of battle rang clear onto the streets. Zuldin quickly noticed his companion's interest. "You enjoy gladiatorial combat?" "It held meaning where I come from," Thanael answered, not revealing more. He dashed ahead, and Zuldin followed behind, wondering what was going on. As they approached the arena, the sound of cheers and applause filled their ears. The crowd was packed tightly around the entrance, pushing and shoving to get a glimpse of the fighters inside. Zuldin and Thanael squeezed their way through the throngs of people, trying not to draw too much attention to themselves. Inside the arena, they watched as the gladiators battled fiercely against each other, weapons clashing and blood flying. The two companions bought some grilled meat and ale and enjoyed the display for a while. The gnome eyed his new friend curiously. After the battles, they continued on their way, until they eventually passed through the harbor. The Dark Elf had never seen the sea. He knew the sky overhead from occasional forays to the surface, but a body of water that stretches to the horizon was quite the sight to behold. He let the cold wind whip into his face, tasting the saltiness that came with it. What a remarkable journey, he thought to himself, wishing he had entered upon it under different circumstances. In the darker and dirtier parts of Cardion, still near the harbor, the Dark Elf suddenly stopped. He walked up to a patch of wall that was overgrown with a thin black vine which had spread everywhere. Thanael tore off some leaves. "Shadowstalk, interesting," he said, absently grinding the leaves to powder, and a black mist enveloped his hand. "I remember this from my home." "It's a plague," Zuldin grumbled, "especially in the lower regions of the city. The growth is spreading like wildfire. People say it is like that only since Cardion was conquered, but cannot explain why." The two continued on their path, past the infamous Orc district which they did not enter, and back towards the inn of Soliana's refuge. "We're called the Guild," Zuldin finally said. "It's a very informal congregation of like-minded outcasts, but we stand together. None of us are friends of Jakar and his enforcers, that's for sure. I think we're the only place left in all of Cardion where people are still truly free." He made a pause, weighing his next words. "Some of us also do some things for Fondia every once in a while. Petty theft, the occasional heist, you know." The young gnome shrugged, trying to gauge the Dark Elf's reaction. Thanael simply looked back, making Zuldin uncomfortable. "Well, if you join us, you could help us out, and in turn you'd be able to do whatever it is you came here to do," the gnome added nervously. "Avenge my family," Thanael said, having taken the time to process all he had learned. "I will learn who killed my family and avenge my kin." Zuldin looked at him in consternation. Well, yes, you could do that," he said, looking at the ground and continuing ahead. The two of them went on in silence, until they had reached the inn that was the last refuge of the outcasts of Cardion.